If something isn't right in your relationship, if you're just hitting a spot that just feels rough, I have a solution for you. One solution that's going to fix that relationship to make it better. Every relationship, every marriage, every single one of us hits rough spots. And rough spots are normal. They're a normal part of a relationship. And a rough spot could just be that you're just not clicking together. You're not seeing each other enough. You're not having any time to connect. Maybe you're too busy with the kids. That life comes at us fast. And all of a sudden, we have children. And now we're both doing things we never thought we'd be doing. Maybe it's that you just haven't taken the time to remember what you like about each other. And you love each other, but you're not doing any of the things that each other needs. I talk a lot about love languages in relationship, and we'll get into some of that. But the reality is understanding our partnership, understanding what's needed in any relationship, even in business, believe it or not, we have to make sure that relationships are a natural thing that we work on. And in a business environment, I've had partners for many, many years in business. I can't be successful if I'm not aware of what's important to them, of who's important to them, of what we're working towards. Is it the same goal? These are all things that happen in any relationship that can be extremely challenging. But the ones that we really, really love to talk about, the ones we genuinely love to learn from, are the ones where it's our romantic relationships. And our romantic relationships matter because it's where we find so much value in ourselves. When you love somebody, you find like a superpower in that other person. Sometimes the superpower is they balance you out. Sometimes they make you feel invincible. Sometimes they complete you in a way, like Jerry Maguire says when he gets in the elevator and he goes, "You complete me." And these are the things that are really the good parts of a romantic relationship. Of course, there are other good parts in a romantic relationship, and that often also becomes a challenge. Marriages often end in 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 divorce for two main reasons. Number one is money, number two is sex, and may not be in that order. And a lot of times it's because people don't see the world the same way. So there's lots of things in a relationship, a romantic relationship, that we can actually have happen that push us apart instead of bring us together. But what can we do to actually help ourselves? What can we do to get ourselves in a position that we don't have to go so far that we stop liking each other, and maybe we even stop being in love the way that we always thought that we would be, especially when we were young and dumb and totally into each other. And my wife and I were talking about this the other day. We literally would sleep in a twin bed together. And it was so tight and so uncomfortable. You would lay there with like your arm completely dead asleep, and you wouldn't get up to go pee even when you had to because you just didn't want to leave that person. Like, young love is the greatest thing in the world. But how do you bring it back to some of that when times get a little tough? I have a solution. This is a solution that is a story and something that actually worked for my wife and I. And I didn't know it was going to work this way. I knew that certain parts of this would work, but I didn't really understand what we were embarking upon. And it kind of goes like this. We had our first son, and everything was fairly easy. He was a pretty easy baby. He listened quite well. He slept really good. The trap that you have to have that second child, which I'm extremely grateful for, but we did. And we had that second child. And I felt like, hey, I've done this before. I know what to do. I'm going to take the oldest and I'm going to go out and we're going to go run errands, and I'm going to come home from work and we're going to do fun things. And, all of a sudden I'm trying to relieve Adrian of time, so with my oldest, so that we can actually have her and the youngest have time to bond and do the things that they want to do. And I thought I was helping. I wasn't helping. I was hurting. And one day she's like, you get to do all the fun stuff. How come you're doing all the fun stuff and I'm doing all the hard stuff? And we had this like really good conversation that was kind of an argument and a disagreement. And so it was kind of building. I remember listening to the Five Love Languages with Gary Chapman as we drove to a wedding, and our youngest cried all the way up and all the way back. And the stress of having two children was very challenging. It also happened to be that I was in the world of finance, and it was 2009 that this happened. And 2008 and 2009 were two very challenging years in the financial world. And so I was making less money for the first time in my career after having record years every year. And then all of a sudden I'm making less money, and I don't feel connected the way that we were. I thought I had fatherhood figured out. 3 years in, I was ready. I was good. I didn't have anything figured out. We didn't have anything figured out. We were just doing our best. But these snags that we hit, we had to find a solution. And so after all these things, we were still investing, we were learning, we were trying, but we decided to go on a trip. And early on in our marriage, I set the precedent that I didn't travel a lot growing up. So we were going to take trips every time we had a chance. And luckily, the company that I worked for, we earned 2 great trips a year. They were elaborate and 5-star hotels. They were beautiful things that we normally couldn't even afford at the time. And I'm forever grateful for those experiences. I'm even more grateful for this because in this story, we end up heading out to the Caribbean. We're in the British Virgin Islands. We're on a ferry heading to Tortola or somewhere like that, St. John's. I don't remember exactly where we are. I can almost see what we're wearing. That's how impactful this moment was to me. And Adrienne kind of gives me a hug. She comes in and she kind of leans into me and looks up at me. And I still remember it. And she goes, hey, this is our ROM week. And I said, ROM? I like the way that sounds, but I don't know what ROM means. And if you listen to me and you've listened to my videos before, you know what ROM means, but I'm going to explain it to anyone that's never listened before. And so ROM, she goes, means rekindle our marriage. And I said, well, we need that. And I know exactly what we need to do. And she goes, all right, listen, we're gonna work on it together. And we started a week of just reconnection. ROM and rekindling our marriage was about having moments where we forgot that we were parents, that we forgot that we were busy with work, or we were challenged in an environment that wasn't perfect, and that we were maybe making a little less money than the year before, or whatever it was about each other. It was about reconnection, about reestablishing the right kinds of boundaries, reinvesting in each other. It was about actually learning what we needed to learn about growing up together, because we were kids. We got married in our early 20s. We were kids, and we had to learn what each other needed. And so a ROM week or even a ROM weekend really is a trip to remove yourself from everything you normally do. So it cannot be the norm. You cannot do this in your house. It's very difficult. You can have a great moment in your house, but you cannot do this in your house. It requires you to separate from the everyday, to separate from the children. And by the way, after the kids are gone, I'm just now kind of feeling what that might feel like. I still believe that this is necessary. You still have to separate from the everyday, because you get into these habits that don't always include each other. And the farther along you go in these habits, the further away you can go from each other. So during a ROM week, obviously intimacy is mandatory. It's mandatory if your love language is physical touch, 100%, but it's also mandatory if you're a man, because every man's love language is physical touch and then something else. So for me, it's words of affirmation. Just knowing that there's good things we're doing together, knowing that she feels that I'm doing the right things for her, that I feel appreciated. These are important. For my wife, it was about being quality time, having time together. I think there's some acts of service in there as I've gotten older, but I'm still trying to figure that one out. The reality was we also had some adventures. We did some things that were uncomfortable. We did some things together that we didn't normally do. So growing up, I could tell you when we were dating, if we were both on the beach, I would often go and play soccer or play volleyball or do whatever. And then she would lay out and talk to the girls. And I really tried to be more centered in and around her. And that was me stepping out of my comfort zone. And I know it sounds like it's a no brainer. And I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you had this figured out so early, but we were two young kids who had just had kids, and we were figuring out 5, 6 years into our relationship how to make this an epic, long love story, not something that was just going to be a great relationship, had a couple kids, and gave up. And if we were going to do that, it was going to be really easy to do that. But it was going to be very difficult to keep investing in each other, to listen to each other, to talk about things. I like to go deep. I like to talk about deep topics. And she gave me that time. We had conversations about where we would send the kids to school and what we'd be doing. And I'm looking into the future and the vision. We also had some conversations about what she needed on a day-to-day basis, what she needed help with, things I might not be thinking about that were really important to her and the kids. We focused on reconnection. And we did things throughout, like dinners alone and dinners with couples. I love going out when we do ROM weeks or weekends. We always seem to meet couples and they become like immediate friends. You meet in an elevator or you're at the pool and you start talking. And before you know it, you're having this great relationship with these people that you may never see again. But for that week or that weekend, they're your best friends. And so by having a dinner alone and focus just on each other, but also having time with other people, when you're with other people, it gives you a chance to see why you love the other person. I always get to see the things I love about my wife when we're around other people. I love her confidence. I love her discipline. I love the ability that she has to make the room feel better, or to laugh at herself, or to say anything and not worry about what anyone else is thinking. I don't always see that when it's just the two of us. But when I'm with her alone, or when I'm with her with someone else, I really notice it because it makes me laugh. It makes me feel good. It takes pressure off of me in the conversation because I know she's going to say something funny or something interesting. And I'm using this example because I think so often we think it can only be the two of us, but it really can't. The recipe includes experiencing life with other people. The adventure part, I think, is really good because you have to kind of know what the person needs. And I need adventure. And most of the time she wants consistency. And it's fine. If we could go to the pool or go to the beach and we could listen to the waves and she could read a great book, she's fine. I cannot sit that long. I've got to do something else. So we have to give and take. But the reality is a ROM week or a ROM weekend is more about giving than it is about taking. It's more about you giving of yourself to somebody else that you love, that you chose, that you picked, and you're recentering around the things that matter to them. And if you're both doing that, you're both extremely reconnected. So we would come back from this and, we were on the plane ride back and I can remember like it was yesterday, her going, I needed that. We needed that. And what's interesting is I took note and we started doing that twice a year minimum. I found that in our marriage, if we didn't do that every 6 months at a minimum, we really, really struggled a bit. And when I say struggle, I love our marriage. I love our family. I love everything we have. But it just means that we weren't on the same page all the time. And it can show up in little short-term frustrations or things that you don't need. And this made it better. So I started to really focus on at least having one trip that we got away from, and then a weekend or two throughout the year where we separated for just the two of us. We have some friends we go to Virginia winery together with every holiday season, and it was always a fun thing. We have We have some other friends that we travel with and we went skiing with. I'm not a big skier. I don't love it, but I do like it enough that I've gone a couple times and my wife loves it. So again, it's something that we do. And then we have some times where we just go away together. Sometimes if you really need it, that's where the date night comes in. If you just have to have something in a short term, quick fix, separate, drop everything, take a staycation for one night. For us in Virginia Beach, we have a great beach. We can go down to the Cavalier, we can rent a room, we can have a great dinner, walk on the beach, and just remember again that we're two separate people that have come together to create something great. The greatest thing we've ever done is create our family. And the smartest thing we ever did, at least I believe, is marry each other. And that starts all the other great things that happened. It started the great story. What do you need to do when you hit these rough patches? What are the things you want to pay attention to? Well, ROM is the solution, but here's a couple takeaways. Takeaway number one is give more. What does your partner need? What makes them happy? If you find yourself just thinking about what makes you happy, your relationship is never going to work. Or you're always going to be unhappy because all you're focused on is you. I. And this is hard. This is hard for everybody, especially if you feel like you need more. But the reality is, if you need more, you have to give more. Giving more in a ROM is one of the most important things you can do. Separate and provide that human what they need the most of. Number two is stepping out of your comfort zone. Stepping out of your comfort zone can go a couple of different ways. Number one, it means change location and know your partner's location preferences. I know that if I take my wife to the beach, we are both going to be happier. If it's the Caribbean or if it's a beautiful Florida Gulf beach, if there's pretty water and we can get up with the sun, we can go to bed early because that's really important to her. Not always important to me, but super important to her. And we can actually have great weather, beach days, get a good tan, have a couple of drinks. She's really happy. And I'm really happy as well. Now, I also love going to Europe, and that's an adventure that I love. So if we went to Europe, that would be more focused on me and less on her. If we went to the Caribbean, that would be me focusing more on what she loves. Give and take, but give more. So for me, if I only in the beginning years, I only went to the Caribbean because she loved it. And that's what mattered to me. If I knew she had a great time, then we had a great time. Stepping out of my comfort zone, removing location was very important. The other stepping out of the comfort zone is things like parasailing. I've never wanted to parasail. I don't like it. I think it's ridiculously dangerous. It's always like two random guys that bought a boat that looks like it's falling apart. I don't know how they got a license to do this, and she likes to do it. So I've done it once with her, and I did it because it was out of my comfort zone, not something I like to do. I really didn't enjoy it at all. The only thing I liked about it was when we were coming down. But the truth was she loved it. And she knows that I stepped out of my comfort zone for her. These are all things that matter. So often we show love in the way that we need to feel loved. And that's not really what we should be doing. We should be focusing on how the partner needs to feel loved. And they should be focusing on how we need to feel loved. And if that's the case, then we can certainly do better. Another key takeaway is no kids and preferably no family. So, you really have to separate from who you are. And what I mean by that is this is not who you are really. This is who you were before you had kids. This is not your role in your family. So, if you're the one that cooks everybody dinners all the time and you're the mom that's the superhero and does all the work like my wife, like my mom, well, that's not the version of you that we want. And the same for me. Like if you're running a business and you're super involved, I used to leave my cell phone in the locked box in the room. And I would go out to the beach all day, separate completely all day, because if I'm constantly checking in with everybody, I've got to separate from the role that I'm in, as do they. So we have to create that gap so we can become who we really are. It's funny, I had this conversation with some friends about the vacation thing I was talking about, where you meet this couple and you have the greatest time, and you don't see those people again, but you're a version of yourself that you don't actually get to see very often. Why? Why is that version hidden in us? Why is it that we have to separate to go on vacation to be as fun loving as we know we are? To be as open minded and interested in other people as we know we are? It's just something about separating from the stress of life that gives us that freedom to be who we are. And you've got to do that when you separate on these weekends. You really have to step into who you are. As long as you continue to make it about the other person, both of those things can work together. So, no kids, no family, and nothing that brings you back into a role that doesn't allow you to be who you are meant to be. And the last thing is, you have to normalize these. They have to be normalized. You have to make them so that when you're doing them, you know that it's not the last time you're going to do it. Now, there is some fun in thinking that it could be the last time, but it doesn't work. The most important thing is to know that there's another time, that there's going to be another time where I invest in you, where you invest in me, where we put each other's needs, goals, love, marriage, partnership, relationship, whatever it is, right in front of each other for everyone else to see. Something simple like holding her hand. I can't tell you how many times, we hold hands. It's not a lot, but on a trip like this, I could see us walking down the beach holding hands. Things change. It's worth it. It brings us closer together. It brings you closer together with your partner. And so, I think that's a really, really valuable thing. And at the end of the day, I have been practicing this for many, many years. And I want to say something else that's really important. I'm practicing this. I do not have a perfect marriage. I do not have a perfect life. I don't have a perfect wife, and she doesn't have a perfect husband. It is all imperfections. What we're doing is sharing some things that have worked. What I'm doing is giving you some of the failures I've made and some of the solutions that I've had. So when I talk about these things, when we share some of these ideas, think about it. Put yourself in the story. When was the last time you had a ROM? When was the last time you separated from your normal role as mom or dad, brother or sister, friend that coordinates everything? When was the last time you did that and just focused on the person you love, your spouse, your partner? When did you do that? And if you haven't done that in a while, I encourage you to do it. And I encourage you to tell me about it if you want, because I'd love to hear that it went great. We're going to normalize ROM. We're going to normalize marriages rekindling, regenerating, regrowing what was there from the beginning, because it's true. It can happen, and it's worth it.